Chris, when I was here during the middle 1960s, in retrospect, I was pretty naive. I thought that some of the work that I was doing in the circuitry of the cerebral cortex, really, I could understand how memory and learning work, and therefore I would understand consciousness. And I learned a lot, but I certainly didn't learn any of that. So now we're decades later, and as you look at the field as director of the Brain Research Institute, of which I'm proud to be an alumnus, what are the different categories of content that are now within the scope of brain research? How can we begin to look at the field for the topics we want to understand?
I think the topics are very overlapping with those in the 60s. That we're still trying to understand learning and memory. That's one of our biggest areas at UCLA. This is still key. We still don't understand learning and memory processes thoroughly at all. That's still a big area. Addiction is still a big area. We know some of the circuits, but we don't know how to help an addicted person yet. We still don't. And as I say, it's not only the reward circuitry, it's what happens when you take away that reward circuitry, the depression, the anhedonia, the feeling bad after you've stopped the drugs.
Sure.
This is the driver. And, we spent a lot of time looking at reward, but now we have to look at the other side of the story, which is the dysphoria, which happens when you stop the drug, because that's the real driver. And the adaptations which occur. We're only just scratching the surface of the adaptations that we know must occur with addiction. Other areas which are very important in neurodegeneration. We're all getting older. And even though, we've known for Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and Huntington's disease, these have been diseases which have been very prolific in our society, still really don't have good handles on these diseases. Huntington's, of course, we know the gene for a long time, but there's still no route to helping these people with this disease. And genetics, we may know the genetic cause, but we don't necessarily have tools to help the patients with these complex diseases.
Because the ultimate result and the genetic aberration, but the genetic aberration has to go through a translation into proteins, into cell membranes, into neurons, into circuitry, and then ultimately it winds up with this terrible behavioral deficit. But you have to answer all those questions in the interim, or it doesn't.
The
help.
gene is right at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's the problem. We know the gene, we know the genetics which can cause certain types of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. There's genes which can create these same kind of symptoms and behaviors, but finding the circuits of finding or understanding the whole process is much more complicated than just understanding.
But this is an important model, and that's a model that has developed certainly after I was trying my naive efforts, because I was sort of looking at the behaviors and then at the last step trying to figure out what happens. And maybe that's part, but we had no knowledge of the importance of all the other prior steps. We sort of knew it was there, but we sort of felt that it was there in a metabolic sense, meaning it's just providing the energy to get to the really important part out here. But now we know that the importance is throughout the process.
Right.
And that kind of model applies to a great deal of neuroscience today.
Yep. I think it applies to almost everything. But you're right. To understand the entirety of the process is much more than just understanding the gene or the endpoint symptom of what happens to the cell, and it's the process is what we're trying to elucidate now.
And what are some examples of that in terms of behavioral deficits from a neuropsychiatric point of view, that you can see that you're making progress in filling in some of these intermediary steps?
Well, in the case of in the case of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, you know the neurons which die.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the dopaminergic neurons from the substantia nigra going up to the striatum.
So just where are these, just so we can orient in the human brain, where are these elements?
Well, they kind of start around close to just above the brainstem, and they go sort of midbrain brainstem, and they travel forward into the striatum, which is
right below the cortex.
Yes, right below the cortex,
okay. and these are mediated by a specific kind of neurotransmitter.
This is dopamine. Yes.
And we know that's important in Parkinson's disease.
It's very important in Parkinson's, right. where you treat with L-Dopa, which is
a replacement of kind. Yeah. Right.
So you know what decays, and you know that this in turn causes the degradation of other pathways. But what is really happening in the cell is really difficult to figure out. There's lots of changes within the cell. Really don't know what the causative nature of for Parkinson's really is. Mm. You just know it's in these dopaminergic cells. That the theories have been proposed. There's a number of probably a number of different etiologies which can generate it. Oh. I mean, we know that pesticides can be.
So just to take that as a specific example, what is the genetic component of it versus the environmental? Who knows?
Who knows? I mean,
but pesticides is
pesticides,
you know, identified
as one of the substances. I mean, clearly, the environmental the environmental triggers can overpower genetics in many ways. I mean, this is clear. You can poison yourself
a lot of different ways.
In lots of different ways, and so you can overpower the genetics. I mean, you may have these cells may be susceptible to dying anyway with the pesticides, but that gives you clues about what may be the causative nature of the disease. But it's still a bit of a black box. We still don't know what's really going on there.
So how do you see the field developing with this model from genetics to behavioral expression? Is this something that will be done on a symptom by symptom basis, or there's some more generalized principles that once you get them, you can apply to multiple syndromes?
I don't think there's going to be a solution of one solution which fits all. I think every system and every disease is going to have a different pathway to go through. In some cases, it's going to be the genetic defect in the cell, which is where this protein is expressed, is going to be the cell is going to go wrong. Maybe it's 5 or 6 cells down the road with another genetic defect. It's really difficult to give a single pathway solution for everything which goes wrong with the brain.
Sure. But I think we're continuing to appreciate the level of complexity and just awesome structure.
It is amazing. It's a very complex structure, and we have to accept that.